Our high school field trip to the old mining town was supposed to be educational, but the moment we arrived, I could tell something was off. The town was in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dense forests and towering mountains. Our guide, an old man with a gruff voice and a stern expression, explained that the town had been abandoned after a series of mining accidents in the early 1900s. "This place has a lot of history," he said, "but stay close to the group, and don't wander into the mines. They're dangerous, and no one's been inside for years." As we explored the crumbling buildings and rusting machinery, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The wind seemed to whisper through the cracks in the walls, carrying faint echoes of voices long forgotten. My friend Alex nudged me and grinned. "Hey, want to go check out one of the mines? Bet it'll be cool." I hesitated, remembering the guide's warning, but curiosity got the better of me. We slipped away from the group and headed toward one of the larger mine entrances, a gaping black hole carved into the side of a hill. The air grew colder as we approached, and the smell of damp earth filled my nostrils. "This is awesome," Alex whispered, shining his phone's flashlight into the tunnel. The light barely penetrated the darkness, but we stepped inside anyway, our footsteps echoing off the stone walls. As we ventured deeper, the temperature dropped even more, and the air became thick with dust. We walked for what felt like hours, the narrow tunnel twisting and turning, leading us deeper into the mine. Just as I was about to suggest turning back, we heard it, a soft, rhythmic tapping, like someone striking metal with a hammer. Alex and I exchanged nervous glances. "Maybe it's the wind," he said, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, echoing all around us. "Let's go," I muttered, my voice trembling. We turned to leave, but the tunnel behind us seemed longer than before. The walls felt like they were closing in, and the light from Alex's phone began to flicker. Come on," Alex muttered, his voice rising in panic. But then we stopped in our tracks, frozen by the sight before us. Standing in the middle of the tunnel, blocking our path, was a figure. It was barely visible in the dim light, but I could see its twisted, emaciated form. Its skin stretched tight over its bones. Its eyes glowed faintly, like dying embers, and its mouth hung open in a silent scream. We backed away, but the thing followed, its footsteps slow and deliberate. The tapping sound grew louder, now coming from all around us, like dozens of miners hammering away in the darkness. We ran, the tunnel twisting and turning in ways that didn't make sense. The air grew thick with dust, and I could barely breathe. Behind us, the figure was getting closer, its heavy footsteps pounding against the stone floor. Just when I thought we were trapped, we stumbled out of the tunnel and into the daylight, gasping for air. The mine entrance loomed behind us, but the figure was gone. We never told anyone what happened in the mine. When we rejoined the group, the guide gave us a knowing look, but said nothing. As we boarded the bus to leave, I glanced back at the mine and saw the faint glow of eyes staring back at me from the darkness. The field trip to the forest lodge was meant to be a bonding experience for the students, but from the moment we arrived, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The lodge was an old, creaky building nestled deep in the woods, miles away from the nearest town. Our teachers assured us it was safe, but the silence of the surrounding forest felt unnatural, oppressive. On the first night, the power went out. At first, we thought it was just a routine blackout, but then the wind picked up, howling through the trees with a ferocity that made the windows rattle. The lodge was plunged into darkness, and we were told to stay in our rooms while the teachers tried to fix the generator. My roommates and I huddled together, using our phones as flashlights. The wind outside grew louder, almost like voices whispering through the trees. Then out of nowhere, we heard a loud thud, followed by the sound of footsteps in the hallway. "Who's out there?" one of my friends called, but no one answered. The footsteps stopped, and all we could hear was the wind. Suddenly, The door to our room creaked open, revealing the empty hallway beyond. We stared at each other, unsure of what to do. Finally, I grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the hallway, my heart pounding. The hallway was empty, but the floorboards creaked as if someone had just walked through. I shined the light down the hall, and that's when I saw it, a shadowy figure at the far end, standing perfectly still. "Guys, there's someone out here," I whispered, my voice trembling. My friends joined me, peeking out into the hall, but by the time they looked, the figure was gone. We quickly shut the door and locked it, our nerves on edge. But the night was far from over. As the hours dragged on, the strange noises continued. Footsteps, doors creaking open, and the sound of someone whispering just outside our door. We didn't dare open it again. At some point, we must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I remember is waking up to sunlight streaming through the window. The power was back on, and everything seemed normal, until we went downstairs. The teachers were pale and on edge. One of the students was missing. His bed had been neatly made, his bags packed, but no one had seen him since the power went out. The teachers insisted he must have wandered off and that the police would be called, but we all knew better. He hadn't wandered off. Whatever had been walking the halls that night had taken him. The field trip to the Museum of Oddities sounded like fun at first. The museum was famous for its strange and unusual exhibits, taxidermy animals, ancient artifacts, and bizarre sculptures. But as soon as we walked through the door, I felt a strange chill in the air, like the building itself was watching us. The tour guide was an eccentric old man with wild white hair and a crooked smile. He led us through the dimly lit halls, pointing out the various exhibits with great enthusiasm. Most of the other students were laughing and joking, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. We passed by a display of ancient masks, each one more grotesque than the last. The guide told us that the masks were used in rituals by long-forgotten tribes, meant to summon spirits from the afterlife. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine as I stared at one of the masks, a twisted, horned face with hollow eyes. As the tour went on, I started to notice strange things. The air felt heavier, and the shadows seemed to shift and move when I wasn't looking. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but then something happened that I couldn't explain. We were standing in front of an exhibit about cursed objects when I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye, a figure standing at the end of the hall. It was just a shadow, but it was moving, getting closer with each step. I blinked, and it was gone. I nudged my friend Lisa. "Did you see that?" "See what?" she asked, glancing around. "That shadow. It was right there." Lisa shook her head, but the uneasy look on her face told me she had felt it too. As we moved deeper into the museum, the atmosphere grew darker, more oppressive. The tour guide's voice became distorted, echoing strangely in the narrow halls. The shadows grew longer, twisting and curling around the exhibits like they were alive. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out. We were plunged into darkness, the only sound the nervous whispers of my classmates. Then, out of the silence, came the sound of footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, and getting closer. My heart pounded in my chest as I fumbled for my phone, using the flashlight to scan the room. The footsteps stopped, but when I turned the light toward the cursed objects exhibit, I saw it, a figure standing in the shadows, its face hidden behind one of the ancient masks. I screamed and the lights flickered back on. The figure was gone, but the sense of dread lingered. The tour guide quickly ushered us toward the exit, his crooked smile replaced by a tight-lipped frown. As we left the museum, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us. I glanced back one last time and saw the shadowy figure standing in the doorway, its hollow eyes watching us leave.